This prison is abandoned, sealed, quiet, but investigators say one man entered after dark and was never the same when they found him. Because something inside this place doesn't let people leave whole. This is Montelupich Prison TA's story. The cell that answers back Montelupich Prison sits behind rusted gates and stained concrete walls in Krakow, its outer structure sagging with age. From the outside, it looks tired, like a place that's already finished telling its story. That's a lie. Inside, the air is damp and metallic. Corridors stretch longer than they should, lined with doors that hang open just enough to feel intentional. The walls are thick, layered with decades of confinement, interrogation, and executions. Montelupich was not a normal prison. During World War II, it became a place where people entered alive and left as records. After it was abandoned, urban explorers stayed away from one section in particular, the lower interrogation wing, not because of collapse, because of what followed people out. In 2012, a local photographer named Marek entered the prison alone at night to document abandoned war sites. He brought cameras, lights, and a recorder. He planned to stay less than an hour. He never came out. Security footage from a nearby street camera showed Marek entering the grounds at 11:18 p.m. No footage ever showed him leaving. When authorities finally searched the prison the next morning, they found him in a sealed cell deep underground. The door was locked from the outside. Inside, Marek was alive, barely. He was sitting upright against the wall, eyes open, staring forward. His camera lay shattered on the floor. His recorder was still running. He was whispering, not calling for help, repeating something, over and over. They're still asking. Doctors later said Marek suffered massive internal trauma, broken ribs, severe bruising around the neck, but there were no defensive wounds. As if he hadn't fought back, as if he was being held still. When police reviewed the audio, they found something worse. The recorder captured two voices, Marek's, and another one responding to him, calm, patient, not human, asking questions in Polish that matched historical interrogation, transcripts from Montelupich, names, affiliations, confessions. At one point, Marek begins to cry and says, "I already died here." The other voice answers, "Then answer properly." Marek died 3 hours after being found. Cause of death, internal bleeding. Official explanation, unknown. The lower wing has been sealed ever since. Locals say at night, you can still hear voices drifting up through the concrete. Not screaming, interrogating. Montelupich Prison is empty now, but empty doesn't mean inactive. Some places don't trap spirits. They continue the work they were built for. So if you ever enter an abandoned prison and hear a voice asking questions, don't answer. Because once it starts the interview, it doesn't end it. If you want more true-feeling stories, where people enter abandoned places and never come back, stay with this channel. There are prisons around the world that are still taking statements. And some of them are still waiting for you. From the outside, this prison looks almost invisible. No towers, no dramatic walls, no warning signs. That was the point. Because the most dangerous thing about this place was how quietly it erased people. This is Lefortovo Prison TH story. The building that learned silence Lefortovo Prison does not announce itself. Tucked into an ordinary Moscow neighborhood, its outer walls are plain, almost careful. Trees grow close. Streets pass nearby. From a distance, it looks administrative, forgettable. That design was intentional. Lefortovo was built to disappear people without spectacle. Once through the gate, the world compresses. The courtyard is narrow and controlled, surrounded by walls that block sound more than sight. Even traffic noise from outside fades unnaturally fast, as if absorbed by the stone. Inside, silence is enforced by design. Corridors are short and angled to prevent sound from traveling. Floors are padded beneath hard surfaces. Doors close without echo. Even footsteps feel muted, as if the building refuses to let noise exist. Former detainees described the prison as too quiet, not peaceful, not calm, artificial. Cells are small and sparse. Walls are thick enough that voices cannot reach neighboring rooms. Windows sit high, offering light without orientation. You never know where you are inside the structure. That disorientation doesn't fade with time. It deepens. Former staff said Lefortovo behaved differently from other prisons. Guards spoke in whispers without realizing it. Movements became precise. Unnecessary motion felt wrong. One maintenance worker assigned to late-night inspections described something unsettling. When he stopped walking, the silence felt incomplete, not empty, unfinished. He said it felt as if the building expected motion, not noise. As long as people moved, everything felt stable. When movement stopped, pressure built subtly, like air tightening around the ears. After the prison partially emptied during later years, the sensation intensified. Empty corridors felt heavier than occupied ones. Doors that hadn't been opened in years still felt active, as if they were part of a process that hadn't officially ended. No sounds, no shadows, no movement. Just structure doing what it was designed to do. Contain, separate, remove. Lefortovo never needed fear to function. It relied on silence. And silence, when perfected, as the rest on its own Lefortovo Prison, still stands. Quiet, controlled, unnoticed. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because places like this don't leave scars you can see. They leave gaps. If you want to explore more abandoned prisons where nothing follows you home, but something still changes while you're inside, stay with this channel. Some buildings don't haunt you. They simply remove you for a while and put you back different. This prison was built fast, by forced hands, and torn down decades later. But people who lived nearby say the space didn't calm down when the walls fell. It changed. This was Carabanchel Prison's story. The shape that wouldn't break Carabanchel Prison once rose on the edge of Madrid like a concrete wheel. From the outside, it looked severe but organized: long walls, watchtowers, and a massive circular layout meant to see everything from the center. It was built by prisoners. That mattered. The structure was heavy and raw, poured fast, designed to dominate. Approaching it, the scale overwhelmed you. The walls didn't just block entry, they erased perspective. Streets ended, sound flattened. The prison became the horizon. Inside, the circular design took control immediately. Cell blocks curved endlessly, making it impossible to judge distance. No straight lines, no sense of progress. You could walk for minutes and feel like you hadn't moved at all. Light entered unevenly through high openings, never reaching the center of the corridors. The air felt stale even when doors were open. Movement slowed naturally, as if the building resisted speed. Former detainees said the prison confused the body. Not violently, gradually. You lost track of direction first, then time, then urgency. When Carabanchel was finally abandoned, neighbors expected relief. Instead, they noticed something strange. The area felt tense. People avoided cutting across the empty grounds. Conversations lowered when passing by. Dogs refused to walk near the perimeter fence. Inside the abandoned structure, maintenance crews reported disorientation within minutes. Compass apps malfunctioned. Footsteps echoed unpredictably, sometimes sounding closer than they were. One worker described standing in the central rotunda and feeling pressure from all directions at once, as if the building was still monitoring him. After demolition began, something even stranger happened. As walls came down, the sensation didn't fade. It spread. Residents complained of unease in newly built apartments. Hallways felt circular even when they weren't. People got lost on straight streets. Construction crews repeatedly misjudged distances. Carabanchel wasn't just a prison, it was a system. And breaking the structure didn't stop the system from functioning. It had already trained the Carabanchel Prison is gone. No walls, no towers, no cells. But the shape it imposed never fully left. Some places don't need to remain standing to keep control. They just need time to settle in. If you want to hear more stories about abandoned prisons that change the land around them, stay with this channel. Because some buildings don't disappear. They dissolve. And what's left behind still remembers how it worked. This prison was never meant to scare anyone. It was meant to end people quietly. And in the old wings, long before modern renovations, something happened that guards were never trained to explain. This is Black Dolphin Prison. The parts that were sealed and left behind TH story. The wings that refused to empty from the outside. Black Dolphin Prison looks absolute. Flat land, endless horizon. No trees tall enough to block the wind. No buildings close enough to suggest escape. The prison sits alone, surrounded by openness that feels intentional. Isolation isn't created by walls here. It's created by distance. The older wings were built first. Heavy concrete, narrow slits for windows, corridors designed to remove any sense of direction. From above, the layout was confusing by design. From inside, it was worse. Movement never felt natural. Inside the old wings, ceilings were low. Light was artificial and unforgiving. The air stayed cold even when the outside heat climbed. Sound behaved strangely, not echoing, not absorbing, just stopping. Guards assigned to those wings said time behaved differently there, not faster, not slower, thicker. Minutes felt longer without dragging. Hours passed without relief. Clocks were checked constantly, not because time mattered, but because people needed proof it still existed. When prisoners were transferred out of the old wings into newer sections, guards noticed something disturbing. The silence followed. Even empty, the old wings felt occupied. Doors remained shut, though unlocked. Corridors felt resisted, as if walking through pressure rather than space. One guard, assigned to inventory the abandoned section before sealing it, reported an unusual sensation. Standing still caused discomfort, not fear, strain, as if the space required motion to remain stable. When he stopped walking, the air felt heavier around his chest. When he moved again, it eased. Not immediately, gradually, like a system recalibrating. Later reviews showed the same behavior in others. Workers unconsciously kept moving in the old wings. No one lingered. No one rested against walls. No one stayed longer than necessary. The prison didn't demand attention. It demanded compliance. When the old wings were finally sealed, the decision wasn't based on decay. Structurally, they were sound. But everyone agreed on one thing. The space felt complete only when people were inside it. Empty corridors felt wrong. Like a machine left running without material to process the old wings of Black Dolphin. Prison are closed now, sealed, quiet, unused. But guards say the newer sections feel different because of it. Lighter, less rigid, less exact. As if something was finally contained elsewhere. If you want to hear more stories about abandoned prison spaces that were never meant to rest, stay here. Some places don't haunt people. They require them. At the edge of the world, there was a prison so isolated that even sound struggled to escape it. People sent here weren't meant to return. They were meant to end here. This is Ushuaia Prison TH story, where the cold keeps time. Ushuaia Prison was built at the southernmost tip of the world, surrounded by mountains, forests, and icy water. From the outside, it looks like a fortress dropped into emptiness. Thick stone walls, narrow windows, and a constant wind that never seems to rest. The cold here is different. It doesn't rush, it waits. Approaching the prison, the wind sharpens, funneled between the walls. The building blocks the horizon, making the land feel smaller than it is. Snow and ice collect in corners where sunlight never reaches. Inside, the temperature stays low year-round. Stone floors leach warmth instantly. Breath becomes visible, even in rooms meant for administration. The prison was designed so comfort never had time to settle. The cell blocks stretch long and straight, forming spokes from a central hub. Guards could see down every corridor at once. Prisoners could see nothing but distance and doors. Cells were narrow, iron-barred, and exposed. No insulation, no softness. At night, wind slipped through gaps in the stone, carrying the sound of the mountains outside. Former inmates wrote later that the worst part wasn't the cold. It was the waiting. The prison trained you to listen to footsteps that might not come, to doors that stayed closed, to weather that decided everything. Storms trapped people inside for days. Silence stretched until it felt physical. After the prison closed, caretakers noticed something unsettling. The building reacted to weather. On calm days, the interior felt almost neutral. But when blizzards rolled in, the prison seemed to tighten. Corridors felt narrower. Doors felt heavier. Even experienced workers avoided certain wings during storms. One caretaker described standing in the central hub during heavy snowfall. As the wind intensified outside, the interior air pressure shifted slightly enough to make his ears pop. Then the building went still. No drafts, no settling sounds. Just the sense that the prison was listening to the storm, measuring it, as it always had. When the wind finally eased, the sensation lifted. Ushuaia Prison wasn't abandoned because it failed. It was abandoned because nothing should be that far from warmth for that long. But the building never learned how to stop enduring. Ushuaia Prison still stands at the edge of the world, cold, quiet, patient, and when storms move in from the mountains, the building feels complete again, like isolation was always its natural state. If you want to hear more stories about places built to erase hope through distance and time, stay with this channel. Some prisons weren't designed to scare you. They were designed to outlast you. This prison was built to disappear into the hillside, hidden, quiet, out of sight. But people who worked here say the building never accepted that it was abandoned. It kept doing one thing long after everyone left. This is Glenside Prison TA's story. The place that never stopped listening. Glenside Prison sat low against the land, its stone walls blending into the slope instead of rising above it. From the road, it looked almost modest older than it appeared, calmer than it felt. Trees grew close to the perimeter, softening the outline, making the prison easy to overlook. That was intentional. Inside the gates, the layout changed your posture immediately. Paths curved inward. Walls leaned slightly, narrowing perspective. You didn't feel trapped, you felt contained, like the space was guiding you where it wanted you to go. The yard was quiet even on windy days. Sound settled instead of traveling. Footsteps seemed to stop short, as if absorbed by the ground. Inside the cell blocks, the stone held a steady coolness. Not cold, stable. The kind of temperature that doesn't respond to weather, only to time. Cells were small, but orderly. Doors heavy, but balanced. Everything built for control through calm. Former staff said Glenside didn't rely on intimidation. It relied on awareness. Prisoners always knew where they were. The walls never let you forget. Light entered carefully through high openings, never fully illuminating a room, never fully leaving it dark. When the prison closed and the site was repurposed, maintenance crews noticed something odd. The building reacted to presence. Lights in unused corridors flicked on briefly when someone entered nearby rooms. Not faulty wiring, just brief illumination, like acknowledgement. Motion sensors installed years later triggered without movement, always in the same locations, near old observation points, corners where guards once stood. One caretaker described walking through an empty wing late in the afternoon. As he stopped to check a doorframe, the pressure in the hallway shifted subtle but unmistakable. He said it felt like the building had adjusted to him standing still, as if stillness wasn't allowed for long. Even after renovations removed most of the original structures, people working on the site reported the same sensation, an urge to keep moving, to stay aware of where they were, to avoid lingering in certain spaces. The prison no longer held inmates, but it still recognized behavior. Glenside wasn't built to punish loudly. It was built to observe quietly. Glenside Prison doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't chase you. It watches how you move through it. And when you leave, the unease fades slowly, like something making sure you're really gone. If you want to hear more stories about abandoned places that still notice who enters them, stay here. Some prisons don't hold people anymore. They hold attention. This prison was torn down piece by piece. Every brick removed. Every trace erased. And yet, people who worked here said something strange happened right before it disappeared. The prison began acting like it knew it was about to be left alone. This was Spandau Prison, the story. The prison that refused to be empty. Spandau Prison stood isolated in the middle of Berlin, surrounded by open space and strict security, long after most prisons would have faded into history. From the outside, it looked plain gray walls, sharp corners, nothing decorative. That plainness was intentional. Spandau was built to remove identity. Inside, the layout was rigid and repetitive. Corridors ran straight with no visual comfort. Cells were narrow, exact, and stripped of anything unnecessary. The building didn't confuse people, it disciplined them. For years, only a single inmate remained inside the entire prison. Guards didn't speak his name inside the walls. They said names carried too far here. As demolition approached, sections of the prison were slowly shut down, wings closed, corridors sealed. Yet staff reported something unsettling during the final months. The building resisted emptiness. Guards walking through unused corridors felt an odd sense of alignment, as if their steps needed to match a rhythm already set. Doors that were never used still felt active, like they expected someone behind them. Even stranger, clocks behaved inconsistently. Watches ran slow inside certain hallways, then corrected themselves outside. Wall clocks stopped at the same minute repeatedly, no matter how often they were replaced. The time matched nothing official. It matched routine, the prison's old schedule. On the final night before demolition began, a lone security officer completed the last walkthrough. He described the prison as feeling full, despite being completely empty, not crowded, occupied. As he reached the central corridor, he stopped involuntarily. The space felt complete balanced, as if the prison had finally reached the state it was designed for. One inmate, one routine, no deviation. The next morning, demolition crews arrived. And for the first time in decades, the prison felt wrong, unbalanced. As if something had already left. Spandau Prison no longer exists. But people who knew it say the same thing. The prison didn't die when it was destroyed. It ended when it was finally alone. If you want to explore more abandoned places that resisted being forgotten, stay here. Some buildings don't fear demolition. They fear irrelevance. This prison no longer stands. The buildings are gone. The streets look ordinary. But people still lower their voices here, without knowing why. This is where Sugamo Prison once stood. TZ story. The place that kept its schedule from the outside. Sugamo Prison was once rigid and precise. High walls, watchtowers, clean lines. It sat within the city, but never belonged to it. Trains passed. Shops opened and closed. The prison stayed the same. Order was everything here. Inside the gates, movement followed rules so strict they became habit. Paths were straight. Corners were sharp. Cells were small, evenly spaced, and identical, built not to punish loudly, but to standardize people. Prisoners spoke later about the quiet, not silence timing. Lights turned on and off at exact moments. Doors opened and closed without delay. Meals arrived when expected. Even suffering followed a schedule. When the prison was dismantled after the war, officials believed removing the structures would end its influence. The land was redeveloped, roads were laid, buildings rose, but residents noticed something subtle. Shops in the area struggled to stay open past certain hours. Foot traffic thinned suddenly in the evenings. People felt uncomfortable lingering, even with no obvious reason. Urban planners blamed coincidence, until a city survey revealed something odd. Pedestrian flow slowed in the same pattern every day, at the exact time Sugamo Prison once enforced lockups. Inside what had been the central yard, modern buildings showed unexplained issues. Security systems reset themselves. Lights flickered at regular intervals. Maintenance crews found doors unlocked, not randomly, but on schedule. One night, a building manager stayed late to trace a recurring power issue. At 10:02 p.m., every hallway light dimmed simultaneously, then returned. That time matched an old prison record. Lights out. A manager later described a strange sensation during those minutes. Not fear, structure, as if the space expected compliance. Even without walls, the area behaved as though boundaries were still present. People stopped walking where gates had once stood. Traffic slowed where roll calls had happened. Sound seemed to flatten, as if absorbed. Sugamo Prison didn't need to remain standing. It had already trained the ground. Sugamo Prison is gone, but it isn't finished. Because some places don't disappear when you tear them down. They continue quietly through habit, timing, and behavior. So if you ever find yourself leaving an area early, lowering your voice without knowing why, you might be standing somewhere that still remembers order. If you want to explore more abandoned places that never stopped functioning, stay with this channel. Some prisons don't need walls anymore. They already set the rules.